Conversations with Garmamie. Our guest is Karim Byron, and he joins us from Osaka, Japan. How you doing, Karim?
I'm doing well, my friend. I'm doing well.
Good to see you, man. It's been a while. Tell us, if you don't mind, how many years have you been living in Japan?
Since 2005, so about just over 15 years now.
Wow, 15 years. And initially, you moved over there, obviously, to teach English and to compete in martial arts. And
hmm
but it's been a very interesting journey. I've had the opportunity to interview you, a few times over the years, and you bring a lot of interesting insight from your own personal experience and your own as a martial artist. But more than that, if you don't mind, reintroduce yourself to us, please.
Um,
Sorry, I'm
well,
putting you on the
yeah,
spot,
yeah,
but
it's all right. It's all right. I guess the tone of your show is like martial arts oriented, so I'll start from there as a martial artist. I guess uh, when I came, I mean, I'm a practice Brazilian jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, combat submission wrestling, boxing, judo, and traditional martial arts as well. I started in traditional martial arts when I was about 6 years old and continue with them steadily until I went to university. Then within university, I started training at Bob Carver's, which taught the range of Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, combat submission wrestling, Jeet Kune Do, uh, Kali, and the Mande Muda and Silat. So I started training there, and I was there for about 7 years. And after that, I moved to Japan and continued training there. And yeah, I got my black belt under Fabio Hollanda. Um, and yeah, I guess at the time people knew me for qualifying for Abu Dhabi as the first Canadian to do so. But after that, when I was in Japan as well, I won the Japanese national title a couple times as a brown belt and as a black belt under the I guess you just call it there's a couple federations here. There's JJFJ and BJJFJ. The BJJFJ is the one that's connected to the IJJF, I think. And then the JJFJ is the one that's connected through like the Gracie Federation. And so there's two of them and their rules are a bit different. But so I won the title for both of those. I also won what is it? I qualified for the GI Abu Dhabi, which is the World Pro, and represented Asia there. And then I won the IBJJFJ. I can't remember the name, but the big one anyway. I won. I was the Asian champion as well, so won that for the region. And what else? Competed in MMA. Fought in Deep Organization in Pancrase. I see a smile come to your face because yeah, their connection to pro wrestling is awesome because it's borderline, especially in Pancrase. You got a lot of guys that are they do both, right? So got to meet a lot of interesting people. Actually, the gym I train at now, it has the All Japan Pro Wrestling heavyweight champion there training with me.
wow,
So Mr. Zeus, his name is. He's awesome. So
wow.
that's yeah, it's kind of funny. So uh, what else? Oh, I fought in kickboxing as well. Um, my last fight being against a K1 veteran, and so that was also interesting as well because I went through different phases. Kind of went from MMA when I first got here, and then went into kickboxing after that, and then went back to the roots in just jujitsu and the grappling. And now I'm teaching part time, and just training on my own, doing stuff like that.
It's interesting because you've accomplished a lot in combat sports. Everybody knows that, here in Ottawa and obviously in Japan. But over the years, I think some people may or may not know. Obviously, your close friends and family know that would it be fair to call you kind of like a philosopher of sorts? You've always been philosophical. Can't even say the word. You've always been, you know, a thinker and a sharer of information, especially when it comes to personal development and aspects of spiritual development through a combination of, I guess, martial arts, but just through observation. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'd rather hear it from you, but it's something that I think really, a lot of people admire because you bring a lot of insight on interesting topics that maybe we don't hear much about. And I guess the first question, I'm framing it here, but the first question is, as a martial artist, how much of that philosophy was developed in your practice of all these martial arts, or through that journey, or was it the other way around? Well, where did that originate from?
Um, I guess in the beginning, since I started out in traditional martial arts, there's always so like I didn't come to know this till years later when actually I'd had Bob Carver come out to Japan uh, to do some teaching and get some certification as well. And while he was here, he was working on his book. His whole thing is called Comprehensive Combatives. And while he was here, we were just talking about the philosophy and the history of martial arts in general. And he came up on, we started discussing, and he introduced to me, which I had known kind of in the background, but he put it right into specific words, was there's the do and there's the jutsu of martial arts. So you have Budo, which is the way, and Bujutsu, which are the techniques. And so the jutsu are really for the literally straight up martial prowess, right? Your ability to handle yourself in live combat, and the techniques and are meant to develop you to do so, right? And then you have the Budo, which is the way, right? And the way is meant to develop yourself as opposed to the techniques. So the jutsu is to develop your body and strength of mind and will as well, but for the purpose of use, right? The do is developing techniques, or using the techniques and all the stuff that goes along with the jutsu to develop your inner self, basically. So it's a way to develop yourself. So that's why it's called, karate do, or instead of jujitsu, it became judo, because that separation in the terminology, or aikido or aikijitsu, right? Like it's saying that this is meant to develop you as a human being. So it won't be as practical, and we recognize that, but this is meant to be a tool for self-development. Right. And so that aspect has always been with me since I started, because that was always been introduced through different teachers and stuff. And I've just kept that with me throughout the whole time. And it's always been there in the background. I think once I started to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai, when I joined a combat-oriented style dojo, it kind of went to the background for a bit, for a number of years. And then in recent time, basically, I'd say from like about 2011 onwards, it's been shifting back the other way. Because I just realized different things about just focusing on the combat aspect, and then realized I have to go back to the roots and balance myself again. And so since I'd say about 2011, I've been really focusing on that aspect of it.
What's kind of facilitated that interest to bring that back?
A couple things.
I guess the need to rebalance. What if you can put that in context?
Well, 2011, as far as martial arts is concerned, was a tumultuous kind of year for me. What had happened was that it's kind of like the end of 2011, beginning of 2012, I think it was, whenever the earthquake was here, right? And so,
2011.
Yeah. No, so then
2010 or yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, 2011. So it'd be the end of 2010. Then we'll say, okay. Mm-hmm. So what had happened in 2010 was that I was having a lot of success. So within the space of the year, I won the what was it here? So I won the Abu Dhabi Pro, and then went to represent Asia in Abu Dhabi. And then I won the Japanese national, we call it the Japan Open here. I had won the Asian championships, and I had won the Rickson Gracie Cup, all in the space of a year, right? So I was quite active at black belt, and like, I mean, my losses that during that time were to world champions. So I lost to Braulio that year when he was coming up. I lost to Alessandro de Souza, and then my fight to Crone was the last one, and that was actually the last fight of my active competition. And so I was quite busy. I was enjoying myself. I actually had a line on. I was going to move to Okinawa because there's a guy down there who was doing jiu-jitsu, and there's a military base down in Okinawa, and he was saying that he doesn't have enough time to train all the people interested.
Wow.
So having another black belt down there, and a big guy as well, because he's like, he was a Brazilian guy, and so one of my friends had moved down there and kind of knew the scene down there, and he was saying, if I went down, he could set me up with students, a dojo, everything, because there would be no competition, because there's so many people coming onto the military base that are interested in it, that I would have my hands full. And, I wasn't doing anything crazy at the time. I was just, teaching English and training, right? So that was like kind of be a lifestyle move for me, where I was like, okay, I'm going to move to Okinawa, live in a tropical climate, teach Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and ride off into the sunset, right? After a very successful competition, year, maybe train some guys up and, build something. And so, but there was still something growing in the back of my mind from that point on, because there's a part of me that didn't, I don't know how to explain it, but I didn't like what I was becoming, so to speak, right? And then as I was getting ready, so basically my plan was during spring break, because since I work for the school here, I get spring break, summer break, and winter vacation as well. Mm-hmm. And so my spring break, I was going to take and go to the States and go to BJJ University, because so that's where Crone was training out of at the time as well, to get ready for his competitions with Saulo Ribeiro. So I made a phone call there, told them I'm going to come up and spend my spring break there. And then I was going to come back from that and then look at moving to Okinawa, start making the move, right? Try and just, sharpen myself up as well, right? And then I tore my PCL just at that moment, just before spring break, right? Wow. So literally a week before spring break, I tear my PCL, and all the plans go out the window. And I was trapped in a hospital bed for over a month. Wow. Couldn't get out. And that's all I had. And then the day after my surgery, which was about 4 days after the injury, was when the earthquake hit. So I'd literally woken up from my surgery, right? And then I was like, okay. Then the next day, I was going to physio, like rehab, in the hospital in my wheelchair. And I remember sitting there on my first rehab session just before it's about to start. And then my wheelchair starts just rolling back and forth. And I'm like, that's strange. And then, yeah, that was when the big earthquake hit. And I'm like, wow, if we're feeling it this strong in Osaka, wherever that happened, when I saw where it happened, I'm like, if we felt it like that here, where it actually happened must have been crazy. Because, you get used to earthquakes here. Mm-hmm. And Osaka, you get a few rumblings here and there, but then you always say, where's the epicenter? You get used to that kind of, I guess, lifestyle here. And so, yeah, so there I was. A lot of my friends and people that I knew at the time left the country during that month. And people were trying to contact me, stuff like that. But I was just basically going between rehab and a hospital bed, right? Wow. In an all Japanese hospital, right? And I could speak enough, but my kanji wasn't up to snuff, so it was very isolating. And then during that time, I had a lot of times just lie in bed, basically, because that's all I could do, right? Outside of rehab, I needed nurses to like walk me to the bathroom and bathe me and stuff, because it's because I was a pretty big guy, the injury was very like, they wanted me to keep my weight off it, right? So during that time is when I started to kind of go inwards again and spend a lot of time in meditation and get back to things that I had done earlier in life that I've kind of put on hold for combat sports. And actually, what had led to that as well, and if I could go back, it's something I've never actually talked about, but is like the day of the Rickson Gracie Cup, right? I had won my division, and then I went into the absolutes. And that day, I fought 3 black belts in the absolutes to get to the finals in order to fight Crone. So they put me and Crone on the different ends of the brackets, right? And Rickson Gracie had come to the tournament as well with a few of his black belts. Shane Rice was there actually on that day, so it was interesting running into him. And Braulio was there. The Mendez brothers were there. They're all there. And they kind of, and I was just coming off a few wins. And so basically they put me and Crone at the opposite ends of brackets, right? And then we ended up meeting in the finals. And of course, that's the one they put up on the internet, right? But they don't mention that it was like one of the best days of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competition I've had, because I had won, I think, 6 fights that day, all except for one by submission, except for the one that I lost, right? Wow. And so why it was one of the best days competition wise, right? Even though it ended up in a loss. And it was also the worst day. And this is why. It's because one is that a lot of people thought I threw the fight, and so a lot of people thought that because
Why? Really, people thought that?
Yeah. So a friend of mine who I usually, when he came to Osaka, I would give him private lessons. He was like, "Yeah, people are talking and saying you threw the fight," because what had happened was I had fought 3 black belts before that in the division and I had fought 3 black belts and tapped all 3 of them out in under 2 minutes.
Damn.
And then when I fought Crone, it looked like, I was like, a fish out of water, right? What people don't realize is that, for years I'd idolized Rickson Gracie, and to have him sitting there with 3 of his black belts, they're just sitting like in chairs with their arms folded, watching the fight. And I'm fighting his son. There's cameras on us and everything. Right. And I was like, this is what I wanted the whole time. This is the pinnacle of what I would want, right? Here's the guy I idolize. I'm fighting his son. Everyone's watching, da, da, da. And then I kind of, you choke, right? And I kind of froze up and stuff. But that's not what it was. I enjoyed it. What I enjoyed about that is that I was able to just enjoy myself during the fight. I was like, okay, I wonder what this guy can do, right? So I'd let him put me in positions, trying and seeing what I can get out. I wanted to see, because when am I going to get a chance to roll this guy again? But anyway. And then he got me with a great reverse armbar. And that was... And I got to meet Rickson Gracie after, take pictures. He came up and said, "You did good." He had watched my fights coming up through my own division to win the heavyweight division and stuff. And he's like, so it was a great day, actually, all in all, right? But when I was coming home, I was waiting at the bus stop, right? And I had called a friend of mine who was living here in Japan as well. And he was like, "Okay, how did the day go?" and stuff like that, right? And I'm at a bus stop and my arm's in a sling, and I started talking, and the things I was saying was like, well, man, like, I cleared out everybody. Like, I cleared out my division. I cleared out the absolutes. There was no challenge at all. Like, man, I don't even know if the people I was fighting, the difference between them and the guy I was fighting the final, I wouldn't even call these guys black belts, right? Because I cleaned out the absolute division in under 2 minutes, right? Mm-hmm. Besides Crone. And it wasn't even a challenge, right?
Right.
And I don't know what I'm going to do from now, because there doesn't seem to be anyone on my level that I can find in this area, right? And I don't know what these people are doing, but maybe because I'm a big guy, they're not asking me for help. But these guys should be coming to me for seminars and stuff, right? And I'm kind of on a high of the competition day and everything like that. And I was much younger at the time, right? And so I was a bit, going off at the mouth, right? And then when I get onto the bus, right, I realized that one of the black belts that I had fought in the absolutes was standing behind me at the bus stop with all of his students. He had brought his whole academy there.
Oh, man.
And I had just basically trash this guy in front of his students, saying he's not even, you know. And so we all got on the bus, right? And I could hear his students talking behind me. So I'm going to say something to this motherfucker, right?
Man,
Like,
I've never heard this story. This is all new. This is sorry, please.
Yeah, right.
I've never heard
so,
this.
And, you know, and I was like, well, you know, I had felt like, you know, also too, I felt like the odds were stacked against me because everyone wanted me to lose that day because I was fighting Rickson Gracie's son, and he's the small guy and I'm the big guy. And there's a lot of I guess a lot of anger over the years of always being the big guy in jiu-jitsu. So you're always the bad guy because it's about the small guy being the bad guy. And so no matter what I did, right, I could never get come on guys, I'm trying here, right?
Right.
And so it also made me train in a certain way where I'm never going out 100% because if I do, people say I'm using my size and da-da-da. So there's a lot of that going on, right? And so kind of going to combat and fighting big guys, small guys, taking all comers, traveling the world, that was the thing I was going to do to kind of get my own redemption in the eyes of jiu-jitsu and stuff, right? But we're on the bus and his students are there and I just trashed their sensei in front of them, right? And the teacher, I could hear him saying, no, just sit down and be calm, right? And yeah, they were also going on, when we got off the bus, they were also going to the same train as me. So we had this 500-meter walk while they're all walking behind me, wanting to just come up and confront me. Their teachers holding them back. Then we all go to the same ticket stand. So we're all standing in line. Man. So it's all building. And as this is going, I'm feeling like a larger and larger piece of shit, right?
Oh,
the whole way through, right? And then finally, when we're getting to ticket and I got my ticket and I turned around, it was face to face with the guy who I had fought, right? And he was like, come on, man. Basically we had a come on, man moment, He's like, I know, right? And then I was like, yeah. And I just kind of walked off and, but that really impacted me, right? Because I was like, what have I become, right? Where where I could do something like that, right? Because that's not the image I even had of myself. And so that was the last day of competition for me. Since that day, I've never said anything about it, but I kind of put myself in a self-imposed exile from competitive jiu-jitsu. And I never went on the mat in competition since that day. I stopped teaching large classes, and I actually took a break. And so that was all happening. And then the Okinawa thing came up about a couple months later. And then I hurt my leg. And I thought, you know what? Combined with that and now this happening, maybe I should just slow down for a bit and go within. Because I wasn't really, when the Okinawa thing came up, I said, you know what? Maybe I'll go back and I'll do it, right? But so those things were kind of bouncing around in my head. And so I took a month in that hospital bed to just think things over. And when I came out, it was another 8 months of rehab, right?
Wow.
To get back to full, so I had lost all the gains I had made. I was very strong at the time, incredibly strong. I'll say I'm not even put it this way. I was I remember watching Brock Lesnar's workout when he was getting ready for the UFC and going, meh, okay. Yep. Yeah, okay. Like that. So I was pushing it.
How much were you lifting and so on? Because I think I remember you telling me you were.
Yeah, I was I would max out the bar, so I couldn't put any more. I couldn't put when I was doing my hack squats. I couldn't put any more weight on the bar.
Wow.
In the gym, right? I'm sure if I went to a strongman competition, they've got some crazy ones there.
Mm-hmm.
I was benching over 3 plates. I had done 4 plates one time. My deadlift was up around 6 plates.
Wow.
And I could go at a dead run for 13 minutes straight. And I was doing chin-ups, and that was at a weight of about 280 to 300.
That's incredible.
So yeah, it was getting pretty crazy, right? I was pushing my fitness and whatever, but also keeping the size. So I was just getting stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. And then tore my PCL playing basketball with some kids, right?
Wow.
Of all things, right? And and so that all happened. And then I kind of lost all that in the 8 months it took to get rehab, and also stopped teaching during that time. So I basically, the exile was not just self-imposed, but actually physically imposed at the same time. And so that was the when I came out of that 8 months, um, is when I kind of was different from that point onwards. And I really said, you know what, I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to become better from this. I'm not going to let myself get back to that point. And so I'm going to have to balance this now. I'm going to have to really balance this out. And so, yeah, those are the catalysts, you know.
Wow, that's I've never heard this story. This is all news to me, and it's
You've got the exclusive, buddy.
well, thank you, but it's there's so many layers there. If if I can ask this question, like, did you ever forgive yourself for that? I mean, it sounds like that self-imposed, your last competition and then the situation there. Uh, did you ever like just, uh, you know, respectfully? I'm asking. I know it's personal.
Yeah. No.
I'm not trying to,
So
but,
like it took a while for me because I thought, you know, if that's what competition turns me into, I don't want to do it anymore. But also I thought that's not fair to myself because it was a moment. Emotions were high,
exactly.
all that stuff,
It
right?
was a moment. Yes.
Yeah. So if we were to judge ourselves by our worst moments, then the world would be a worse place. And if we were to judge ourselves by our best moments, then the world would be a better place. So um, I had to go through my own journey where that's concerned, right? And it's fine now, and I'm actually thinking about trying to get back into competition at this point. Um, but yeah, I've kind of like moved on from it because I realized it wasn't being productive anymore, and it was actually hurting my training when I was back on the mats and stuff. Always holding that over myself and saying, nope, I'm only going this far today. I'm not gonna, you know what I mean? And it was actually causing injuries where I was letting myself kind of be put into bad positions, things like that, not to try and express my dominance when I'm rolling and stuff. It changed my game and I learned a lot from it because, learn a lot more off your back and stuff. But it also wasn't helping me in training and led to a couple injuries that weren't necessary actually by putting myself in bad situations. So, but yeah, it was just a balancing out from that point on where I said, I'm going to go back to the roots of why I got into martial arts in the first place. And that's when I started going deeper into the philosophical, you could call it, aspects of it.
How, may I ask, how did you dig deep and go about doing that? What speak to us on your on how you did that. I know you meditated, but break it down for us as to how you meditate, if you don't mind. Just explain the process.
Um, well, one was so the whole thing, it took, I went at it from two angles. So I started to read a lot of material, right, on different paths, right? So the Buddhist path, the path of Raja Yoga, Kriya Yoga. I also looked at the Christian mystic path as well, Gnosticism. I even looked at the Kabbalah, which is the Jewish path of mysticism. I was open to everything, basically, right? And also looked at Zen, right? And I kind of said, okay, I'm going to try different things, right? I even looked into Sufism as well and looked into the path of Islam as well. And all of them, when I would read through them, led to the same point in the end. And so that left me with, okay, so what am I going to do now, right? So I said, let me find the simplest and most direct one. And that also took a few times to kind of get right, but I just focused on breathing. I focused on body awareness to start. And once you get proficient at those, then you can dive a bit deeper within. And the same principles that you gain, or the same, I won't say call them strengths, but aptitudes you gain through focusing on breath meditation and body awareness meditation. When you go in then and try to meditate in your mind on the mental plane, you bring those attributes with you and you can apply the same principles. And then, yeah, you have to, I won't say you have to, but what I've found is the more you meditate, the easier it is for you to become aware of subtle movements within yourself. And there's some things that are so subtle that you can't see them until you're very, very still and quiet. And so the depths of the subtlety of your mind and emotions, once you think you think you got a handle on it, it's even subtler and subtler and subtler. So it has to be so that you're not adding or modifying anything at all in order to be able to see things clearly. And so that's just a process of getting quieter and quieter and quieter within.
How has that process changed? Has it changed your perspective on, well, I guess obviously it have. I'm answering the question here. How has that changed your perspective on training in jiu-jitsu, but also living your life in general? Are you always in a state of of reflection? Are you, because it seems to me like each time I speak to you, you're always you're there obviously, but you're in deep thought. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like even right now, just looking at you, you seem like you're
Yeah, it's actually yeah, you have to. So what it is like saying it's there anyways. So we're always in deep thought, actually, all of us. We're just not listening to that side of ourselves.
Hmm.
So you're always talking. You always have a conversation going on in your mind, right? 24/7. And it's just now, I'm going to start paying attention to that at first. And you realize, wow, there's a lot going on I didn't know. And then you start to go, well, what's the conversation behind that conversation?
Hmm.
And so you're going deeper and deeper into your own, let's say, mental space, right? So that your mental space just becomes just as, what's the word, perceptible or perceivable as your outward space. So what's going on in here, right, is balanced out with what's going on out here. And I can see them both equally now, right? So one doesn't overcome the other. I'm not always like outward looking, and then my mental conversation goes on without me being conscious of it. Because basically, if you think about it, your mental conversations you have, you're talking yourself into everything you're doing. That's where your decisions are made. That's where your actions come forth from. So if you're not paying attention on that level, you're basically giving up the steering wheel of your life to something you're not aware of. And so you'll look at your life and say, why these things happen, or how did I get here? Well, now you're paying attention to those things. And so the first thing that happens is you become just a bit more cautious and aware. And you need that time to reflect. That's, I think, why people like, monks go into wilderness, and you just kind of become more, not isolated, but you need time to get to know the inner workings of yourself. And if things are distracting you to constantly look outwards, you're not going to have time. You're not going to have the time to help yourself make that shift. And so you need to put time in. And that's what meditation really is taking the time to look within. And then what that becomes over time will evolve the more you do it. Just like if you were to do anything else. That's why martial arts, it's the same thing. So a lot of the principles that I brought over from martial arts were helping me in my meditation, especially with the concepts of jujitsu, the gentle way, going with things as they are, right? Because I think a lot of times when people start meditation, they're like, well, it's not quiet. I can't stop my thoughts from coming, right? To which, I'd say, well, that's okay, right? Okay. That's fine. That's not the problem. That's not a problem at all, actually. Because we're not trying to stop thoughts from coming. We're not trying to stop the whole mental chatter. At first, you just need to become aware of it and aware of what's going on and saying, well, there's a lot of stuff going on in there that I don't agree with, actually. But it just kind of zips by, and I just accept it. I'm like, wait a minute. I didn't like that. What was that? right? And you realize that you've been kind of being pushed in directions, and your actions have been basically unconscious. They've been under your control, but you've set them on autopilot. And so your reactions to things that are happening, the way you look at the world, they're just set on autopilot. And a lot of the programming, you could say, that you've set up for yourself to kind of just go and autopilot on, you came by those things innocently. So it was based on what you grew up around, things that you kind of accepted as true when you were younger, before you could kind of develop a strong enough psyche where you could say, I'm going to be very, very skeptical of things, right? So a lot of things you just accepted, put in, and then you just run with it. And so a lot of meditation in the beginning is just realizing how much of this is there and not trying to stop it, but actually letting it come up so you can see it, right? Letting it going, and let me see what's in there, right? But not to do anything about it, just to look at it and let it come up. Because if you start judging what comes up, that's going to affect what comes up. Because now if you say, I don't like that, right? Then guess what? That thing's not going to pop up when you're meditating. It's going to pop up in secret when you're focused outwards, and keep pushing your buttons from behind, because you're not providing a space in which all things can arise within yourself. You're now putting judgment upon your own inner space. And so now the next part is, I'm going to just look within and let whatever comes up come up, and not judge any part of it, because I want to see everything that's in there. I want to be fully aware of my inner workings. And I'm not going to say, you can't come in and you're not a part of me and you're not this, or you're great. I'm not going to judge any of it. I'm just going to make a space in which everything that's there can come into the light of my conscious awareness, as opposed to staying in my subconscious awareness. And then resisting the urge to shove things down or elevate things. Give everything a space of equality. And this takes time, is what I can say about that. It just takes time. But you find that when you're doing this for yourself within, you're also able to now naturally do it with others without. Because no matter what we say, you are no more outwardly the sum of what you are inwardly.
How so just going back to what you said there in terms of doing it in a communities, is that what you're saying, or in amongst peers, in terms of the practice of meditation? And if we could just go back to that for a second.
What do you mean? So
Like you were just saying that eventually you're not just doing it for you, you're doing it for a community. Is that or for?
Oh, I see. So yeah, I was saying, like, like when you start to do this for yourself within,
Right.
you're able to naturally express that when you're interacting with others out here.
Oh,
Right?
okay.
Because I'm not trying to be like a better person.
Right.
Right. I've just become less judgmental and open about my own inner space. And so naturally you just reflect that outwards, because you don't have to put on an act to do it. You don't have to force yourself to do it.
Right.
You've done it in here. And so you're going to do that out here. So like, you can't help but, be the sum of what you are in here.
How has this sort of frequency changed the dynamics amongst friends and family and people in your life? If I can ask that.
Well, varying reactions. When I started to make these kind of shifts within, I used to be very vocal about it, because I was like, wow, man, everyone's got to try this. This is so great, right? And then I realized, everyone's on their own journey where this is concerned, so to speak, and kind of backed off a lot, and let flowers grow, right, of their own accord. They'll bloom when they want to bloom, and they'll they'll close when they want to close. You know, it's the same thing where it's like, I'm not going to be judgmental of it. I'm just going to be in a space where, you know, letting it happen, right? But always encouraging in any way I can.
Have you mentored, friends and whatnot in terms of just the practice of meditation and so on? Have you?
If someone asks me about it, I'll definitely share. And I have a few students I teach martial arts to, but I teach the whole thing now. So I balance the, and I let them choose any meditation practice they want, right?
Oh
and
wow!
I
You
ask them
actually
to,
you actually implement this in your coaching.
yes, yeah.
Wow! Wow!
So I say, if I'm going to teach you this, I expect you to do everything because I want you to be fully well-rounded. And then if not, then there's lots of places that will just teach one or the other.
Right.
Right. And those are out there and you can go to that. But if you're going to learn from me, I'm going to teach you, or we're going to work on the whole thing at once. So
That's incredible.
one step outwards, one step inwards, right? So one step in jutsu, one step in do, one step in jutsu, one step in do. Right?
And how's that process been for some of these students of yours?
Rewarding, and insightful, right? I mean, like, there's a saying that the teacher and the student together make the lesson. So the lesson's what's happening. There seems to be two individuals there, but the lesson is what's happening, and we both benefit from it. So it's been amazing. I've seen the shift in people's lifestyles once they've started, and then that just inspires me to, keep on doing what it is that I'm doing, because it's not so much the martial prowess, right? The increase in the martial prowess that's so important. It's the peace and just general contentment in the individual and the openness that I see. And that's how I kind of judge how to even rank students now sometimes when it comes to that. So I kind of have two different ranking systems, right? One is for their internal and one is for the external. And it's from things that I observe that they don't know I'm looking at, right? I had a student who is a very standoffish individual. He comes from a Middle Eastern country, and he has to do a private class with a female, and so it's very hard. And I know it was going to be hard for him, and I know it was going to be very hard for her, coming from a Western country, and their religions are different, right? But I put them as a pair together because I knew the friction it would cause.
Interesting.
And but those are the conditions I put forth, right? And it's been very difficult because the female is the senior student and has been training longer. So she's always going to be in Japan, we say the senpai, which is the senior. And so for, a guy from that part of the world to come in and have a Western female as his senpai in a class, and she has to teach him sometimes, it's challenging. And then the resistance he's going to put up towards that is very challenging to her. But the rules are you must remain civil, you must remain calm, right? And you must keep a hold of yourself, right, through all of this, because for whatever reason, you're in this situation now. So roll with it, right? Roll with it. And I remember it was literally just this week. The male student at the end of the class, when I was in earshot, I wasn't listening, went up to her and said, I really want to thank you for the extra time you put in before class started with me, because it really made a difference today, because I was able to get to a next level in the training because you put in that extra time with me before the class started. And that's when I said, okay, he's ready that was his promotion. He gave it to himself. Do you understand?
Wow. Yeah.
He gave it to himself. And so, basically, it's hard. It's weird to say, but the internal ranking system, right, is literally if you can make me nod and smile or cry, right?
Wow. That's
Heartwarming moments. I'm like, damn, buddy,
dude,
you went from like raging to that, and you were doing it of your own will because he didn't know I was listening, and I'm like, that's what I love to see. You know what I mean? That's what I love to see.
that's
Your technique is still horrible, but man, you made me. I'm respecting you as an individual, as a you're showing your heart, and that's what I'm there to develop in the end.
It's transformation in a way. This is Karim. This is really fascinating. Unfortunately I want to interview you again soon. I have to let you go in like 2 minutes, but I want to bring you on to talk more about this. In the meantime, tell us more. Tell us where we can find your podcast series, because you have a podcast. If you don't mind.
Oh yeah.
Oneness Radio. Where can we find it? I'm going to add.
Yeah, you can find it on YouTube, Spotify. Look up for Oneness Radio. You'll know it's that one because the logo is a microphone with the Taoist yin yang symbol on it.
Right.
I also launched a friendship-based T-shirt company as well called Tomo Tees. If you go to tomotees.com, it's based on the Japanese word dachi. Tomodachi means friend. So we came up with all the different types of dachis. Like for my dojo buddies, dojo dachi. There's bromo dachi for my bromance friends out there. For all the different types of friends you have, we've got the apparel for you. So yeah, check out the podcast and spread love around the world with Tomo Tees.
Karim, we're going to do this again very, very soon. Thank you very much for your time.